Hi guys, this is Mattjestic Gaming here, and today we're here with the Twitch chat to bring you a live recording of the intermediate part of my Queen guide. So today we'll be focusing on guiding the intermediate players, and for this particular guide we're looking at positioning and positioning focus. So a lot of players have been asking me about positioning. What do I mean by positioning? It's the positioning of your units. We know the basic positioning. We know that the range unit will attack the one that's closest to it. Similar to a melee unit. A melee unit will hit the one that's closest to it. But what do I really mean by positioning? It's not that if I place the assassin, the jump or the movement of assassin, but rather what I meant is where do we place the unit, how do the chess pieces interact, and how do they work. So what's going to happen is very basic. Let's start from the scratch. If I place the assassin here, he's going to jump to the back line, aiming for the back units, because that is the AI for the assassins. For this particular unit, what she's going to do is she's trying to jump into range to the unit that she's going to attack. Let's have a look at these enchantress over here, and I'll guide you as we go. So they see each other. She's going to jump one step forward, and then she's going to find a unit that she would attack. And yes, this is the very basics of it. Let me close the window. So yeah, sorry about that. So let me go a little further now. What do I mean by positioning? Why is positioning so important for us? Well, two things actually. Positioning allows us to have a better spot in the game. Positioning allows us to win fights where we normally would have lost the fight, or where the fights would be too close for us. How does this help us? For example, why do I position here? Why do I position it there? And what is going through my mind when I do those positioning? I think this will be a great guide to explain a lot of the mind thoughts as a high-level chess player, what I would think and what I think works for me, which has been working throughout most of my games. And yeah, let me share you some of the insights to that. For example, for the first 3 rounds, you want to split damage evenly, or you want to take down the units in the back line with the assassin. So notice how we had 2 tasks in the front almost next to each other. What this does is this allows damage to be split across them almost evenly. Now there's some more interesting things I want to show you guys. For example, over here, why do I position my units this way? Why don't I position it differently? I position my units this way because I know what my lineup is. I know my lineup are goblins. I know those two are going to have the Mercury regeneration, and there's a random nanobot. So the Tinker is positioned forward on the purpose that if the Tinker do get nanobot, Tinker will tank for us likely as he can. But unfortunately for this one, the enemy is positioned in the middle, so the Tinker couldn't tank for us. If the Tinker was here, maybe he can be tanking, but over here, that means my position was not optimal for this particular matchup. So I usually position my units that I want to receive damage in the front. We know that. Okay, that Tinker died really badly. Yeah, just to say. Okay, now let's look over here. What happens here is, okay, I'm gonna guess on units. I'm actually playing this one to not to optimum, but suboptimal. This particular position, what does this position mean? And why do I have a position like this? Looking at this positioning, what I'm doing is I'm using the units on the far end of the side as my tanks. The Tusk and my Clockwork are likely going to tank. The enemy could be on this side, or this side. So if I can pause here, but I can't. So let me explain to you. The Tinker in the middle will receive 1 instance of damage and very unlikely to receive more damage from the back line. The unit on the left and the unit on the right are likely to receive 2 instances of damage from the enemy units. The assassin is likely to receive 0 instance of damage because he's jumping to the back. Maybe just 1 instance if a unit targets at him after. Now there's a little more to that as well. Let's see. Oh, this is not bad. So I'm actually playing this automatically, subconsciously as well. So okay, let's have a look at it over here as well. So having the bounty hunter here and here makes a big difference. Having him here means there's a chance of him having a nanobot, I want him to be in the front line as my 2 tanks. Say 2 stars as a tank, and the squishy ones in the middle, because I feel the squishy ones in the middle give them more chance of surviving. Here, unfortunately, they're positioned this way, so the squishy ones in the middle actually took 2 instants of damage, but that is okay. Here, this one's taking 1 instant of damage. So the general concept of me with positioning is, in the early games, I tend to have a 2-star unit to tank for us, and 1-star units that I can't 1-star unit that I can't just leave here, that I need to be placed down on the table because we're goblins. I put them in between some other units. Let me give you this as an example. So what do I mean by that? I have to have those 1-star units. I'm putting them there because they're goblins. I usually don't put most of the 1-stars in the front because I don't want 1-stars to die too fast. But for goblins, on this particular case, I tend to put them at the front because of nanobots. If any of them gets nanobot, I really don't want them to be in the back line to receive no damage, because that counteracts the effect of a nanobot. Here he got the nanobot, and I put him in the front for the case if he gets the nanobot. But notice how they position again. Those 2 are taking lots of damage, while those 2 aren't taking enough damage. That means I probably should switch my positioning as well. Now this is the very basic of positioning for a goblin player or for the initial start. There's other forms of positioning I'll be showing you guys as well. Now we're going to buy this Lycan, and since we're losing, we're just going to roll once. And that's not the best roll I want to see, actually. Pretty silly. Okay, so let's try different positioning. This time we're going to try defensive positioning. This is called the offensive positioning. This is called the defensive position. When do we use our offensive positioning? Is when we feel we're strong enough, or when we want our units to receive damage equally. On the defensive position, what we're doing is we're trying to break the enemy's positioning or formation to get them into us. And sometimes we do fight into them depending on how they position. Notice here, the assassin will jump in, and the Tusk at the back will actually jump in, while the Tinker will stay where he is because he's a ranged unit. What does that mean for us is that it allows us to have a rather more defensive positioning in this particular format. Now let me just quickly close the notifications in the back. And okay, that's better. So what do I mean by defensive positioning compared to offensive positioning? Offensive positioning allows us to share even damage on each of the units, while defensive positioning allows us to do focus damage on a particular unit. And this can be demonstrated when I get to level 5 over here, especially with the Shadow Fiend. He's the best to demonstrate the defensive positioning because you see so many Shadow Fiends in this particular position. So let me see if I get another Tinker, which we do not. That's fine. So what's going to happen here is the Clock and the Tusk will move forward to seek enemies. The Bounty Hunter will jump forward or be jumped by enemy units. The Shadow Fiend and the Tinker will almost hit the first enemy that comes through. If we have more range units, what's going to happen is all my range unit and all my melee units will be targeting on the first unit that comes to us. This Axe, for example. He's the first focus fire, and 3 units are focusing him, and here the other units are focusing this Tusk, simply because the Tinker is not going to move and the Shadow Fiend is not going to move. It's defensive because I know which unit will take damage and which unit won't take damage for most of the cases. And of course, our unit's a little weaker compared to his, and we're still losing. That is fine, because I haven't been focusing properly on the unit selection as well for this particular game. We did find a Queen of Pain. This is excellent as well. And now I'll show you guys something very interesting. I'm going to change my positioning again. And I wish I had a Timber to show you guys this one. So currently I changed from defensive positioning to an offensive positioning because I'm changing positioning based on the units that is core to my current battlefield. Currently I have a 2-star Queen of Pain. All my units are positioned to help her get most of her damage out. As an assassin, I tend to put assassins that are ranged that does AoE damage for Queen of Pain particularly on this particular spot, here or here. What does that mean? That means as assassin, she's not going to jump forward to seek enemies to seek any backline. She's gonna stay where she is when she faces another player. Let me show you over here. It's gonna do some very basic. Okay, this is excellent. That's why I was summoning to see if I got lucky with the Timber, because Timber is actually one of the better units here. In this particular positioning, what we're looking at is we're looking at the start of an AoE lineup. For this particular AoE lineup, I have Queen of Pain and Timber. And those don't do AoE, but those should stack AoE. I'm stacking AoE to the units that's going to be in front of us. The Queen of Pain is positioned here so that she won't be jumping to the back line. She'll be here and be exposed not to the enemy front line, but rather the enemy front line will be exposed to us. Notice this, and this AoE, they really stack on the enemy unit. This is my offensive positioning to do most AoE damage, and most of the time she's protected until all my front lines are dead. So this is such a nice positioning to make sure I get my AoEs on the units I wanted, and I also have my Queen of Pain, which is an assassin, protected. So I turn this Queen of Pain into a Shadow Fiend, basically a ranged damage dealer instead of a ranged assassin. Again, notice how I put my 1-star in the middle, because I know even though it's a Timber, it's the most squishiest out of the 3 front line. I put my melee AoE units like Timber in the front and my range AoE units in the back in this offensive positioning, simply because I want to AoE everything we can. Unfortunately for this one, he had a defensive positioning, but luckily for us, we dragged them out. And again, see the Queen of Pain, she is usually protected until one of the front line dies. This gives her the most chance of doing damage and the least chance of being killed. She managed to get 2 spells off on this time. But unfortunately, they had a bit stronger team than us, and we lost this one. Because we only have 5 units of course. And I haven't been rolling. Let's see if we get another unit. Let's see if we get one more. Not really. I'm not really playing that on top of the game, by the way, so let's just level up. So again, I think this will be a very nice addition as well. I know that I have mercs. Mercs are quite tanky because they have the regeneration. That's why I want them to tank evenly. I know this Tusk without his warrior armor is not going to be very tanky, so I put him on the side. Usually notice the units I put on the diagonal side behind my tanks are my bruisers or my off tank. When I say off tank, I mean I want them to take some damage, but I don't want them to take all the damage. Of course, this offensive positioning doesn't work all the time, simply because there are people that's going to position in different ways. But it works most of the time because most people do just put the units in the front without thinking much about it. But we do think a lot into the positioning that we have. Now, if I had a Shadow Fiend here, which I'll get him, and let's see if we find another pair, which we're not. Yeah, I should really not be rolling like this, by the way. But yeah, I'll try to demonstrate something. Over here. I'll take this Tusk back. Notice how here, again, I'm stacking my range units. Even the position of this Razor is in such that if a new unit comes from the side, you'll hit the Razor first instead of the Queen of Pain, because she is still my core unit for this lineup. Only one assassin will usually get her, and the other assassin is usually going to hit the Razor, because he is actually on this side. So usually I'll put my range AoE units right where the Razor and the Queen of Pain is for the early rounds. I think up to round 25, that is. Why do I say for the early rounds? This is because after round 25, we'll face a lot of units like Disruptors, Tide Hunters, Conquerors. That actually does a decent amount of AoE, and we don't want to be stacking here. Because if we don't get the upper hand, they're gonna get the AoEs onto us, and that is not good. Okay. Now we talk about a bit of the defensive offensive positioning I really like to look at. I'm gonna sell this one. Let's see if we can find a Timber. I'm not really playing like to the top of the game, by the way, in case anyone is wondering, because I usually don't do things like this. Oh yeah, we found a Timber. Excellent. And we also found a Lycan. Even better. Again, notice I quickly define which unit is the strongest, and I know Timber and Clock are my best tanks. This Tinker is always put on the front line because Tinker in the back line does absolutely nothing. As a Goblin player, I know Tinker gains mana super slowly. Notice how slow Tinker gains mana. 5, 6 mana per hit. So Tinker gets mana very slowly. Tinker has to be damaged to make sure Tinker gets his value back. Tinker has 10 armor but not much HP, but still Tinker needs to be damaged because Tinker also regenerates as a merc. This is nice. I missed my Lycan and the game instantly gave me another Lycan, so I can't refuse that. Again, this Lycan has 1500 HP. Compared to a Clock, Clock is actually tankier. So what I'm doing with Lycan is I want to show you guys as well. I'm going to give this to my Timber. The Lycan is positioned here as an Assassin, Bruiser, Defender. The Assassins usually jump the backline. They will likely jump my Queen of Pain, and Queen of Pain has 0 armor. I'm okay with one Assassin hitting her to boost her mana, but I don't really want that to happen. So the Lycan, for particularly, or sometimes I put up Clock there, is such so that if Assassin jumps, there's a high chance for the Lycan to be fighting the Assassin instead of the Assassin to be hitting my Queen of Pain for free. This is especially helpful when you see 3 Assassin lineup, or you can see a Goblin player with just 1 2-star Bounty Hunter. I'm going to be finding some units, and just another quick guide over here. I already have 6 2-star units. 2 of them being 2 cost 2 stars and 1 of them being 3 cost 2 stars. This is an indication that I should be saving, because the only way I can add another value unit is by leveling up, and usually you really want to save around level 6 or level 7, and we'll touch on the winning and savings on the next guide. Again, I want to focus a little more on positioning first. I want to see if we face Assassin lineup. We didn't. So again, look at this lineup. The frontliners are what my Queen of Pain wants to nuke down, because usually frontliners have armor but not much magic resistance, and the Queen is safe enough to be nuking down at least twice in this round, or even 3 times. Notice how though they're beast units or sometimes they're elves, if the Queen survives, she can do a lot of nuke damage because her low CD and high damage, 6 seconds and 300 damage. Now I'll be saving, and let me show you guys another particular form of lineup. This is called the side lineup, which I really like to do as well. In this particular lineup, the Timber is the main tank, while the Queen again is the main DPS. What's going to happen is the Tinker is going to receive most of the frontal damage from this side and this side, even I think 3 instances of damage usually. Tinker here will receive almost 1 or 2 instances, and Clock will receive 1 or 0 instance. The Lycan, see, the Timber is receiving 3 instances of damage, or even 4 instances, but that's okay. I want him to be there as a tank. The Queen is positioned here so that she won't be jumping, and also she will do most of the AoEs on all the enemy units like this. Unfortunately, they had the stronger lineup with the Demon synergy, which is really strong, but if it wasn't for that, we had a good chance of winning. Let me show you guys one more thing. Oh, of course I'll be showing you guys many things, but this is very interesting as well. So again, my Lycan is positioned here, so he will be facing enemies that runs to the Tinker that protects the Queen. Lycan is my off tank, while Beastmaster is my bruiser. How do I differentiate them? The off tank wants to receive at least 1 instance of damage. The bruiser is happy to receive no damage, while the tank wants to receive 2 or 3 instances of damage. While my nuker wants to be in a position that she can nuke as much as she can, like this. Unfortunately for here, my Queen of Pain evaporated. Now I was gonna say maybe we got a chance to see her do a second round of spells like this Queen, but unfortunately. But notice this bruiser, he was positioned here to take the least instance of damage, or just 1 instance of damage, so he had the highest chance of surviving. I do want to show you guys again with this particular position, but this time with a range unit. What we're gonna do is we're gonna pretend this Tinker is a Luna. We're gonna pretend this is a Shadow thing. So what's gonna happen is when enemy starts, usually what's gonna happen is those 2 will be focused on those 2 units, and those 2 will also focus on those units in front of them. The Beastmaster is likely going to be focused on this unit. This is a particular lineup I like before round 20, because what we're gonna do is we're gonna be winning fights from the right to the left. Of course, this is the Ursa round, so that didn't help. But yeah, the Queen just jumped in and died because we didn't position for the Ursa, but that's okay. I think we should be okay because Lycan's gonna summon. And Timber is a super tank for us. Let's give this to Lycan. And yes, let's have a look at the next round of what I meant by that. I'll be leveling up. I'll put my bounty here. So notice I tile surrounding the queen because I want to protect her from assassins. So what the ideal thinking is that those 5 units will be focusing on those 2 units, and those 2 will be tanking a majority of the enemy units to get their spells off. The idea is we're flanking an enemy from the right to the left. We're winning from this side to this side. Let's see if that happens. Of course, depending on the formation, this might not happen all the time, but it should happen half of the time. Okay. What we expected, the enemy wasn't placed in the middle, so they actually positioning a defensive positioning, so it forced us to jump into them. But that is okay because we prepared ourselves with enough AoEs and with enough tanks, so that the tanks were jumping and Queen were jumping after them. Now, when is the best time we use the middle position, the left positioning, or the right positioning, or the defensive? I feel that there is only 3 types of positioning. One is the middle positioning, this one. This is the middle positioning, where you want to be offensive. You want to get most of your AoEs out, and you know you have enough control to not be controlled by the enemy. What do I mean by that? Is that you know you have a Dota, you know you have a Tide, you know you have a Disruptor, you know you have a Conquer to do enough control. We don't have enough control, so this is not the best positioning for us. But what we do have is a lot of AoE. Notice here, we're going to be AoEing on all of them, but because they have a Deucer, after our AoE, we can't control them, and we're going to be controlled by the boat, like this. So that's why I changed positioning from that particular positioning. So yes, the positioning of this Beastmaster is so that he will usually survive to the last, and he will be able to, you know, do more damage this way. Oh, he almost did it for us actually. Now, after the middle positioning, the side positioning is usually really helpful before round 20, simply because this allows us to have a line of flanking. We're flanking enemies from the right to the left because most of the people do put their units in the middle. So simply to put it, this is like a scissor paper rock positioning. The middle positioning is countered by the side positioning, while the side positioning can be countered by the defensive positioning. And usually the middle positioning counters the middle positioning if you have a superior lineup. So the middle positioning is offensive because you know you're stronger. The side positioning punishes the middle positioning if you have a good tank and a good bruiser. A good tank in the form of Timber, a good bruiser in terms of Beastmaster or a Lycan, and the defensive positioning really capitalizes on you have a good AoE nuker. This is why mages always go to the defensive positioning, because they have a good AoE nuker. And they are very squishy, so they can't take the offensive positioning most of the time. Let me show you the defensive positioning over here. If I were to run defensive positioning with this lineup, it's actually quite difficult because I want to adjust my Queen of Pain. Because she is going to jump outwards the moment she doesn't find an enemy. If I had a Shadow Thing, this will be positioned this way. Let's pretend this Queen of Pain is a Shadow Thing. What that means is the Tinker is the last line of tank for the Shadow Thing, while the Timber is my first line of tank, so is this Bruiser. This is my off tank, this is just my random 2-star. So the Shadow Thing will stay here instead of jumping. Notice how the Tinker is going to stay here and the Shadow Thing is going to stay here. In this defensive positioning, if that was a Shadow Thing by the way, our front line, this tank is going to tank most of the damage, while the off tank will receive the other part of the damage. And yes, sometimes they do jump, and because they're chess units, then they don't listen to us most of the time, unlike Pokemons. And yes, because I didn't have a Shadow Thing, it was not advisable I take this defensive positioning. The best positioning I take is depending on what units I have. And right now my core units are still my AoE units. So even this positioning is no longer good. So what I should have done is I should have been rolling for raises. I should be leveling up. I should be getting disruptors, raises to take the offensive positioning. Because with the disruptor, we can take the initiate. Disruptor and Beastmaster is great. But if we didn't have those, what if we have units like Knights? Why do Knights go to the side? simply because in the side, knights can do the flanking as I described. They can focus down the frontliners, and they know they have a stronger frontliner. So hopefully the three type of positioning I spoke earlier, the offensive, the defensive, and the side positioning gave you guys a bit of insight. And please do try them out, and let me show you all three again. So this is the offensive positioning I would take if I were going to have more AoEs, but we don't have enough AoEs, unfortunately. We only have, so notice how here, the timber is going to stand in the middle, because those two spots are where my AoE frontliner is, those two are where my AoE backliner is. But I won't take this position normally simply because I know we can't have the upper hand, because we don't have enough AoE yet for this round. In this offensive positioning, most of the KC, they have the Deuce in the front to be offensive, but unfortunately for her, we were also offensive. We actually nuked her down before she can do anything. So I usually don't put Deuce or even Two-Star in front like that. In this offensive positioning, you maximize your AoE damage, you maximize your mana gain potential. Let me show you the side positioning again. Let's level up, why not? In this side positioning, here we want Razor to take 1 instance of damage. We want Lycan to take 1 or 0 instance of damage, and let's pretend this is a shadow thing. We want Timber to take 1, 2, maybe 3 instance, 1 instance, and 1 instance most of the time. But if they will happen to be right here, this one will actually take a lot of damage as well. But it's acceptable if he just does 1 X. So let's have a look. Multiple instance, 1 instance, and 1 instance after. This particular position really favors us to be winning from this lineup, but yes, they are mage lineup, I know, they duke us down. But what would happen before round 20 is that we'll actually be winning from the right to the left. And that was the side positioning. And finally, the defensive positioning is great if you have units that doesn't jump and break your positioning. Assassins jump, so defensive positioning are not good for assassins. For example, if this is a shadow thing, and the Razor can even go here, the plan is to have something like the Tinker to be the last line of tank, while they will be jumping into our lineup. If this is a shadow thing, the most unit that's going to jump into this lineup, the Clock and the Timber Head to sword, is that we will be focusing 1 or 2 units down as they jump into us. And this is actually perfect. I was going to say, that positioning, if I back myself to the wall, it was actually perfect to defend ourselves against assassins. Simply because you want the defensive positioning against the assassins, what's going to happen with assassins if we backed ourselves to the wall, as they jump towards us, they're actually going to be having trouble to penetrate the most squishy layers of our inside units, because most assassins are melee units. Even the range ones will take the outer layers. What's going to happen is our units will focus on the assassin that's closest to them, while rest of the assassins can't attack. But if you spread your units out, they can attack every unit, and that's when assassin really excels. So this is to defend the assassin as well. And I think this is rather comprehensive in terms of positioning. And the key to notice here is I always adjust my positioning depending on my core unit. Right now, my core unit used to be in Queen of Pain, but I don't have any core unit right now. That means we're gonna lose the mid game, because if you don't have a core unit for the mid game, you can't do very far. But what would my core be at this point in the game? It will be another Razor, it will be a Shadow thing. If I only have Queen of Pain and the Razor, I'll have them in the offensive position. I'd rather take most of the enemy out than to be stuck in a corner and see my queen die too quickly. So this will actually be my positioning. Actually, maybe here. So 2 on the side, so they take less instance, and maybe the Beastmaster. So this way, most of my AoE will be down. The Tinker still, I want him to be tanking. Let's see how we fare with this one. This is round 30, never mind. Poor Tinker. I think maybe in the next one, let me know in the comments, guys, if you guys are interested on seeing the positioning against the neutral monsters. I think that will be very interesting as well, because sometimes even though we have a good lineup, we lose to neutral monsters. I'll make a special guide tomorrow if you guys are interested. I'll make a special one on the neutral monster positioning. What I'll do is, sitting on my 80 gold, I want to show you guys this particular positioning. But knowing I'm sitting at 88 gold, I'm pretty sure we're going to lose this one as well. Let's see. Can we quickly find something that's useful? Perfect. Let me show you my type positioning. This is my type positioning in the middle, giving the tanky items, but between 2 units, because 2 units reduces Ty's chance of being attacked by those 2. He can't stop attacks from this one and this one, but those 2 won't be hitting him most of the time. And for those like that, it's okay, because something is tanky with the Tide on the side. But this is a mage. Usually with a mage, that happens. Because we don't have mana fast enough and they're gonna cast faster than us. I think this will be the end of us as well. So yes, hopefully this gives you guys some insights on my positioning and what do I recommend as 3 particular set of positioning and when do I usually use them. If you want clarity, make sure you give me a comment or ask me a question on Twitch. I'll definitely be ready to explain it. And if you guys want more on positioning with neutral monsters or for a particular lineup, I'm happy to make more videos on positioning. So this is the first video for the intermediate guide for auto chess. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you find it somewhat interesting and helpful. And thank you guys so much for your support, for liking, subscribing, and following. Thank you guys so much on Twitch as well. I really appreciate it. And I'll see you guys next time.